everybody. I'm Bill Clement, and welcome
to the NHL 94 expansion draft. Thanks for the introduction, Mr. Clement. I'm your host, Computer Games. Today we celebrate the birth of a new NHL franchise, the Seattle Kraken. And after seeing the Las Vegas Golden Knights essentially storm the NHL after beginning play in 2017, imaginations are running wild about the potential of a dynasty being built on live TV later on tonight. If the Kraken can come anywhere near the heights Vegas pulled off, they will be a perennial contender. The expectations for expansion teams are night and day from where they were back in the 1990s. Most teams spent 5 years at the bottom of the standings and didn't see any playoff success until the next decade. Columbus and the condemned Atlanta franchise continued the legacy of uncompetitive new additions to hockey. So what has changed over time? A simple explanation for the change in results would have to be the available talent. But are there really more talented players available in today's NHL than in years past? To see how hard it really was for GMs to draft an expansion franchise back then, I turned to the greatest assembly of virtual talent ever put together, NHL 94. It really is the unanimous choice for the greatest hockey simulation of all time, and if you spend time with the game, you see why. It really recreates the anything can happen in any game aspect of the NHL. It's high stakes, there's momentum. Really, if you haven't played it, you would have to give it a shot to know what I'm talking about. But given that it was released on PS4 and Xbox One last year, I think a lot of people are familiar with it. So let's see what kind of team could have come to the Great Northwest 3 decades earlier. So before I showcase the hidden gems I found hidden at the bottom of these historic rosters, I'll first explain the rules of the draft. They're going to be very similar to the most recent expansion draft held in 2017. The clubs eligible will be protecting their top 7 forwards, top 3 defensemen, and 1 goalie. The recent expansion teams, such as the San Jose Sharks and the others that entered the NHL in the 1990s, will not be eligible, just as the Las Vegas Golden Knights are exempt from this current draft. Now let the draft begin. The first player selected is from the Washington Capitals. He is Keith Jones. Keith Jones is the quintessential hockey player. He has scoring ability, he's tough, he's great in the defensive zone. He's the type of player that every team wants. Jones stands 6'2", weighs 200 pounds, and has the offensive skill set needed to play in a top 6 forward position. He can be relied on for close to 20 goals a year and is an outstanding penalty killer. He's somebody that will not leave the ice in shorthanded situations. Above all else, Jones is a great character guy. He's a pleasure to have in a locker room, and if he's not the captain of the team, in a few years he might be an assistant. He is a little bit young at this point to give a C to, but great pickup here. Our next selection is an all-star waiting to happen. He comes from the Vancouver Canucks, standing 6'3", weighing 200 pounds, Peter Nedved. Nedved is going to go on to average about 30 goals a year after this. He's going to play until the mid-2000s, and he is going to be a valuable player on both ends of the ice. Now, being that Nedved had already scored 38 goals at this point in his career and is well expected to be an all-star, it may be confusing that he has this low player rating you just saw of only 57. Well, apparently Peter Nedved had a very bad contract dispute, and that made people at EA think very ill of him. They gave him a very bad player rating, and they left him off the entire depth chart. Given that there are players nowadays that are leaving teams in their prime for contract reasons, it's very realistic I could have acquired Peter Nedved under these circumstances, so I now have a franchise player to build around. Our next selection comes from the Toronto Maple Leafs, and this is a hockey player among hockey players. We are picking up Peter Zezel. Zezel had a 15-year NHL career where he was originally a first-line high-scoring centerman for the Philadelphia Flyers, and transitioned more of a third line player who had very high offensive upside. He averaged about 15 goals a year in the back half of his career and 25 in the beginning. He's a very high character guy. He is a very disciplined hockey player above all else. He's going to do great on both ends of the ice. I know I've said this about all three of my players so far, but these are the type of players Las Vegas added, and look how that went. Hopefully the good things will keep coming. So, time to start looking at defensemen, and I found a great one on the St. Louis roster. Brett Heidigan is a two-way first-pairing defenseman who was part of the great Stanley Cup run the Carolina Hurricanes saw in 2006. He had success in Vancouver, Florida, and played up until 2009 with the Anaheim Ducks. He consistently put up points. This is somebody who's going to play on the power play. He's going to average about 30 points a year, and he's going to be in the plus category almost all of them. Heidigan also possesses ideal size for the position, standing 6'4". So far in the draft, we've added some size, we've added some toughness, but now it's about to look really scary when you see us on your schedule. From the Quebec Nordiques, we select Chris Simon. Chris Simon is a monster. He stands 6'4", weighs 235 pounds, and can beat the living crap out of people. He was the best fighter in his day in the NHL, and he's practically two players in one. You almost had to keep a UFC fighter on your roster as insurance policy to make sure that if you had Wayne Gretzky, someone couldn't beat him up. Typically, that guy couldn't really play the sport of hockey. It was lucky if he even knew how to ice skate. Chris Simon is a guy who you could put on the top 6 forwards. You could put him on your power play, but he brings a ton of value playing on a checking line and keeping the opposition honest about not taking risks because there's somebody who could score on you. It's a 2-in-1 player, a great type of guy to build around. So far, it looks like there was more talent in the NHL than the NHL knew what to do with back in 1994. And I'm about to find another very valuable player who is at the bottom of the roster. That man's name is Randy McKay. Randy McKay is coming from the New Jersey Devils. He is a size and speed specimen. McKay stands 6'2" and weighs 210 pounds. McKay is best remembered as being on a line referred to as the crash line in New Jersey. Playing against them was like going through a car accident. They were all very big and fast, and they were put together to shut down players like Eric Lindros and Jaromir Jagr, who were bigger and faster than typical players in the NHL. If anybody who is not a fan of the New Jersey Devils saw Randy McKay play, especially in the playoffs, you must have hated him. That is because this was one of the most effective players in the league. McKay is most valuable. The next selection comes from the New York Islanders. We're going to go with Travis Green, who is all the way at the bottom of the roster with a very low rating, but there's better days ahead for Travis. Travis is a player whose offensive numbers do fluctuate. He can get anywhere as high as about 70 points to sometimes as low as 30. He's usually going to be in double-digit goals. He's going to be able to make some nice plays, but he's not a difference maker. He's never going to have a very high number of assists. But at the same time, you've got some great size there, and he's going to play better with the talent on this team than what he had surrounding him in New York and other places he played. So this has given him a fresh start, so to speak. A player who kind of stayed around non-contenders is going to a franchise that's off to a great start. For our next selection, we pivot back to defense. We take a look at the Montreal Canadiens roster, and we find a very reliable Sean Hill waiting for us. He has a very low rating right now, but Sean Hill will go on to play about 15 NHL seasons. He's never going to be a superstar. He's not even going to stay consistently in the plus side of things for more than a few years or so, but he is going to be able to stay really healthy, and he is going to be able to play solid minutes. He's not somebody known for making mistakes. He's just kind of a no-frills, solid veteran player that you need on your roster when you're an expansion team. Our next selection is buried treasure at the bottom of a sunken franchise. Martin Gelinas was acquired for the great Wayne Gretzky when he left Edmonton back in 1989, and after some early success has fallen on hard times. His most recent effort was only a 5-goal season, but after a quick change in scenery, he turns into a 30-plus goal scorer. So with this selection, I add a true bona fide superstar. Somebody who is as good as they come offensively, but is also a gifted defensive player. I consider him a strong contender to earn the captaincy very early on, possibly this year. He's definitely going to be on the first line, will be on the first team penalty kill and power play. Jonas is 5'11", 200 pounds, possesses elite speed and skating ability, with the defining trait being clutch goal scoring. Next selection comes from the recently relocated Dallas Stars. We're going to go with Brent Gilchrist. Gilchrist is a hard-checking left winger who, by all means, is a winner. He made a total of 10 appearances in the Stanley Cup playoffs during his career. He was a member of one of the greatest teams ever to win a cup, the 1998 Detroit Red Wings. So here's somebody who is a team player who knows how to buy into a system and play winning hockey. He stands 5'11", weighs 180 pounds, and possesses adequate ability on the offensive end. He's the type of player who's going to score between 15 to 25 goals. More likely to stay towards the 15 side of things, but excels on the defensive end. He gets the type of production I'm talking about in the bottom 6 role. It's a great asset to have a guy who can score and also be relied upon for elite defensive play. Our search for roster depth next takes us to the now defunct Hartford Whalers. This was a roster that did not have a lot of superstar talent on it. It's one of the reasons they moved to Carolina. But we're going to find a valuable piece here in Robert Cron. Robert Cron is a center/winger who goes about 5'10", 175 pounds, and is capable of putting up 50-point seasons. One of the most intriguing things about Cron, while he was a solid player in the 1990s NHL, he's an international player with more speed than size who actually fits better into today's NHL. Cron is the definition of a solid NHL player who never had a chance to play with an elite all-star level center. It should also be noted that Cron currently is employed by the real-life Seattle Kraken, their director of amateur scouting. Our next addition comes from the LA Kings. It's yet another mobile defenseman. It's a very good one this time. We're going with Daryl Sydor. Daryl Sydor had a 17-year NHL career where he excelled on both the offensive and defensive sides of the ice. Sydor stands 6'1", weighs about 210 pounds, and will be the quarterback of the Seattle power play. His gifted offensive skill set makes him capable of anywhere from 30 to 50 points depending on who he's playing with. Everything on the scouting report comes back positive for Sydor. He's an excellent skater, a well-liked teammate, and a proven winner. He's a 2-time Cup champion, and for the most part has proven to be a very durable player. It should be noted, while Sydor did excel before rule changes were made, he is a somewhat smaller sized player for his position that should excel in the new NHL with the rule change. Our next pick comes from one of the most talented rosters in NHL 94, the Pittsburgh Penguins. And when we look down to the bottom of the roster, we're going to find Sean McEachern. McEachern is a high-scoring left winger. He's going to max at about 30 goals a year, but he's going to reach close to that about 3 years in a row. So this is an excellent pickup for us. McEachern stands 5'11", weighs just under 200 pounds. He's somebody who had to really work his way up through the ranks after playing at Boston University, but proved to be an incredibly valuable player with the ability to play all 3 forward positions. You can only hope McEachern blossoms the same way he did with the Ottawa expansion franchise back in the 90s. One undeniable plus with McEachern, he is now at least our 3rd former member of the 1992 USA hockey team that we have drafted, so there's already some team chemistry being built. The next victim in our crime spree is going to be the Detroit Red Wings. They have a loaded roster, and waiting right there for us is Keith Primeau. Keith Primeau is yet to live up to the high expectations when he was drafted #1 overall, but he's about to turn things around. Primeau has elite size, 6'5", 220 pounds, and is a premier defender. He's a gifted offensive player as well, averaging about 70 points when healthy, but he is somebody that makes big-time plays. He's always been on a winning team, he's been a difference maker at every level, and has always put up plus numbers, including an unbelievable plus 34 in 1994. Primo's team-first style of play makes him a candidate for at least assistant captaincy. To put it bluntly, getting Keith Primo in the NHL 94 draft is like buying Amazon stock in 1994. It is at an all-time low in value and about to explode. Our next candidate is no stranger to being picked in an expansion draft from the Boston Bruins, Gord Murphy. Murphy is a undersized but mobile defenseman, somewhat undersized, I should say, at 6 foot, about 200 pounds, but was a key contributor on the Florida Panthers teams of the mid-1990s and played a big-time role on the stretch run they made to the Stanley Cup Finals. He was actually +6 during the Stanley Cup playoffs, and for the most part of his career put up respectable numbers. In Murphy, the Seattle team acquires a player capable of putting up 43 points. He's a proven performer not just in the regular season but in the playoffs. For the most part, he has proven to be durable. You can expect Murphy to eat a lot of minutes between now and the end of the decade. The next pick comes from a team infamous for not having depth. That is the 1994 version of the Philadelphia Flyers. The Flyers do have a defenseman just on the edge of the protection list named Terry Karkner, who is a huge pickup. Karkner, we get a player who stands 6'3", weighs over 200 pounds. Proven in the past capable of producing 43 points, but will be relied more upon as a stay-at-home defenseman. We won't be giving him the power play time he saw with the Philadelphia Flyers. We're going to ask him to play more of a stay-at-home role like he did with the Florida Panthers and found great success. So we have yet another player who helped the Florida Panthers reach the Stanley Cup Finals in 1996 joining our squad. Player who is going to be another. The next pick from the Chicago Blackhawks may come as a big surprise, the reason being this is a player that is somehow not at all in the Chicago lineup, but is one of the best players on the team. That player is Joe Murphy. Murphy has a situation that's a little bit similar to the one with Peter Nedved. He missed time due to an extended contract dispute, and he did not get the super low rating that Nedved got, but he did get taken out of the lineup. Given that he's not even on the power play unit and the virtual Chicago GM Ron Pohlman is probably dealing with the financial constraints Ron Pohlman had to deal with in the real world, there's a good chance I'm going to be able to land him. If I couldn't get Murphy, my backup plan is Stefan Matteau. Let's talk about what I am likely getting. I'm getting somebody with elite physical talent, such elite talent he went #1 overall in the draft. He was drafted by Detroit. It didn't work out there. At this point in his career, though, he starts averaging about 25 goals a year. Another great thing about this addition is this adds to team chemistry. Murphy has played with Martin Gelinas on Edmonton. The sixth and final addition to the defense corps comes from the Calgary Flames. His name is Trent Yoni. Yoni is the quintessential player that you get when you are an expansion franchise. He's very well traveled, never played a full 82 games in the NHL, but managed to be on contenders, and played in a total of 60 playoff games over a 12-year NHL career. I'm not a Trent Yoni expert. It's safe to say we're getting a high character guy. He's a former Olympian and somebody who cares about the game of hockey. He's gone on to have a very successful NHL coaching career as an assistant for the Sharks, the Ducks, the Kings, the Oilers, and also as the head coach of the Chicago Blackhawks from 2005 to 2007. Yoni also keeps the trend going of mobile defensemen on the new Seattle team. The sixth and final addition to the defense corps comes from the Calgary Flames. His name is Trent Yoni. Yoni is the quintessential player that you get when you are an expansion franchise. He's very well traveled. Never played a full 82 games in the NHL, but managed to be on contenders, and played in a total of 60 playoff games over a 12-year NHL career. I'm not a Trent Yoni expert. It's safe to say we're getting a high character guy. He's a former Olympian and somebody who cares about the game of hockey. He's gone on to have a very successful NHL coaching career as an assistant for the Sharks, the Ducks, the Kings, the Oilers, and also as the head coach of the Chicago Blackhawks from 2005 to 2007. Yanni also keeps the trend going of mobile defensemen on the new Seattle. Dome may have been the last skater selected, but oh boy, I'm not done yet. Christmas is about to be canceled in Buffalo because I'm taking away any hope they have for the future. Yes, just waiting for me on the roster is none other than the Dominator himself, Dominik Hasek. Hasek was acquired by Buffalo after appearing in the 1992 Stanley Cup Finals for the Chicago Blackhawks Game 4. He impressed them enough where he was the backup to an established Grant Fuhr. Grant Fuhr was one of the better goaltenders in the league. He actually has the third best rating of all goaltenders in NHL 94. So while hindsight may be 20/20, there's no way Buffalo has any clue how great Hasek is about to become. And I'm picking him up before he wins his first Vezina in 1994. He will stay the best goaltender in the world for the next 15 years. Hasek posts an impressive 220 goals against average career-wise. His save percentage is .922. Solid addition. Backing him up is just a former Vezina Trophy winner, John Vanbiesbrouck. Vanbiesbrouck still has some great years ahead of him. He has 3 All-Star appearances between now and the end of his career, and puts in one of the most impressive playoff performances ever during the 1996 season. His impressive regular and postseason numbers would continue through the decade. Although with Hasek on board, all those years may not be spent here in Seattle. This is a valuable trade chip that we can use to possibly add a true superstar to the defense corps, or who knows where we may have needs due to injury. With no franchises left to plunder, we now get to sit back and admire our impressive take. Before we do that, I think it's time to officially give my retro imaginary franchise a nickname, a mascot, and we're going to go with the Seattle Grunge. I think this team has such a distinct 1990s flair to it that it's the only name appropriate. As far as coaching goes, I'm not really sure who is going to be available, but I may contact Philadelphia and offer Vanbiesbrouck in exchange for Brindamore in hopes of getting a player and coach to him one day. One thing I have to say I'm really proud of when I look at the overall roster, there's such a blend of size and speed, and I mean speed everywhere, where we will not fall victim to the neutral zone trap. Even if we did, we have Dominik Hasek. It doesn't matter. I could send the Hershey Bears out there and we'll make it to the second round of the Stanley Cup. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, your Seattle Grunge.